Hello, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Steve Hodgson, and I'm the Head of Publishing at AMEB. I'm very happy to be here today to launch the brand new AMEB Harp Syllabus and Publications, along with the Principal Consultant for the project, Alice Giles. During this online launch, Alice and I will talk a little about exactly what is included in this new release, the syllabus itself, and the various publications that we've put together as resources for the syllabus, including technical workbooks, AMEB grade books, and a sight reading book. We will then have the privilege of hearing Alice perform some excerpts from the forthcoming AMEB Harp grade books. Just before she does though, I'll talk a little bit about a new and exciting competition being launched by AMEB with our very generous competition partners, Carter Harps Australia and Carmack Harps France, to celebrate the release of the new AMEB Harp resources. So if you want to find out how to win a harp or how your students could win a harp, you'll have to stick around until at least then. Finally, if you have any questions throughout the course of the launch, please feel free to type them into the chat and we'll do our very best to answer them at the end, if time permits. As many of you know, it has been a number of decades since the AMEB Harp syllabus was last revised, and the project has been vast. Alice has led a team of harpists from around the country who together have constructed every aspect of the new syllabus, selecting and grading an enormous amount of repertoire, building and refining the new technical work for each grade, putting together sight reading parameters and reviewing the work of the sight reading composer, and finally selecting and editing the works for the new grade books, the first that AMEB has ever published for harp. I'd like to start by thanking each member of the Harp Syllabus and Publications team for their dedication, their expertise, and for the enormous amount of work done to bring the new Harp Syllabus and Publications to life. Thank you, Alice Giles, Principal Consultant, Bronwyn Wallace, Level 1 Consultant, Jacinta Dennett, Level 2 Consultant, Frances Taylor, Lever Harp Consultant, Jill Atkinson and Catherine Ashley, who were members of the Specialist Advisory Group, as well as our sight reading composer, Mary DOUMANY. So before going any further, I'd like to introduce the Principal Consultant for the AMEB Harp project, Alice Giles. Although for many of you, Alice will need no introduction. Alice is celebrated as one of the world's leading harpists. First prize winner of the 8th Israel International Harp Contest, she has a wide and varied international solo career, performing solo recitals from London's Wigmore Hall through to Mawson Station in Antarctica. She also has an impressive international reputation as a teacher, having given masterclasses at major conservatoriums throughout Europe and the US. She was associate professor at the ANU School of Music from 1999 through to 2008, and is currently lecturer in harp at the Sydney Conservatorium of Music. She is a musica viva in schools artist, presenting the harp to hundreds of primary school children with her show Adventures in Antarctica. Alice was awarded an AM, a member of the Order of Australia, in the 2017 Queen's Birthday Honours for significant service to performing arts as a harpist, mentor, and educator, and through contributions to Australia's musical landscape. Welcome, Alice. Thank you so much for being here and for your tireless work on this very exciting new release, spanning now a number of years.
Thanks so much, Stephen. It's really great to be here. It's been quite an adventure, and I've actually learned a lot more from it than I expected. So it's been wonderful, and it's been also wonderful to work with my wonderful colleagues on putting this together. It's been a great team effort, so I'm here representing them. That's been part of the joy and made it really possible, that team effort.
It really has been quite an adventure, and there's been so much contribution from all of the team. It's been quite wonderful to see it unfold. We'd like to give everyone a bit of insight into the new syllabus and the publications, but there are so many aspects to a syllabus like this, it's a bit hard to know where to start. So let's begin with the big picture. It's an AMEB syllabus, and in some ways that might be very familiar to a lot of people. Like a lot of our syllabuses, this one goes all the way from preliminary, which is a new grade for harp representing the very beginning of a student's journey on the instrument, through to licentiate, which is a diploma-style qualification aimed at really quite advanced players. From the very first meeting, the committee felt it was necessary to have pathways for both pedal harp players and lever harp players. Can you tell us a little bit about this decision and how that all works?
Yes, well, I think that the pedal lever thing, it really brings the new syllabus into line with international standards. There are many more people playing lever harps and going to a higher level with them. There's a lot more contemporary repertoire now for lever harp at a higher level. So this makes the choice to create a new direction and a whole new syllabus for lever harp in level 2 really sensible, and it enables kind of that breadth of the AMEB, which reflects current playing internationally as well as in Australia. And also that the harp is maybe a little unusual in that it has a wide range of people playing it. A lot of adults take up the harp. They've always wanted to learn the harp. And so the idea of making that pathway almost interchangeable, many adults will stay on a lever harp and not go on to a pedal harp, but want to progress further in those AMEB grades.
And similarly, many players play both and might have different interests at different times.
That's right. Yes, many people may go through as students progressing through that sort of more classical path through the pedal harp in level 2, but later on want to come back and do different kind of repertoire or train themselves more for that teaching repertoire and do the same grades in lever harp later on.
Yeah, look, just to give everybody an idea of how this all works. So for level 1, lever harp and pedal harp players play the same repertoire, they play the same technical work. So that goes from preliminary to grade 4. And then at grade 5, the two pathways diverge a little in that there's separate manual lists for pedal harp and lever harp and separate technical work. The lever harp pathway goes all the way from preliminary through to the certificate of performance, which is just above grade 8, whereas the pedal harp pathway goes all the way up to licentiate, but they're very much aligned. The benchmarks at each grade are very much aligned, aren't they?
Yes, so we really started with a technical criteria and then developed the pedal harp level 2 and then made sure that the lever harp level 2 conformed to that technically and musically, the length of pieces, these kind of things, so that they were very evenly matched.
Oh, great. So overall, beyond the separate pathways for the lever and pedal harp, how would you say the syllabus has changed from the old syllabus that people might be familiar with? Is the level of difficulty the same?
No, I think that's probably the biggest difference and something that people were really most asking for. The previous syllabus had some, it was designed for more maybe the elite, you know, the pathway into a symphony orchestra, for example, whereas we really wanted to address the general public of harp students and to make the pathway more smooth. The addition of preliminary helps with this and with certificate, so it enables, you know, that pathway to be spread over another 2 years, in fact. And we've aimed to make that grading more on a level with what students might experience their friends on other instruments are going through, so that with the same amount of dedication and practice, a harp student will be able to keep on a par with the other instruments, and I think that's very important. And also, it's that aspect of it was very important to us, but I think still the harp is very strange that different people find different things difficult because there are so many subtle things involved in controlling the technique, and that'll suit different people in different ways. So there'll be students and teachers who find pieces, you know, pop out at them, oh, what's that in that level or that grade, but our prime consideration was whatever that propinquity from different students, everyone should be able to find a smooth pathway through from preliminary through to certificate. And then I think the associate and licentiate are of a very high level, on a par with other conservatory level instruments. So that associate might be an entry or first couple of years of conservatory, and a licentiate, as you said, more professional level playing. So yeah, that was a big aspect. We have also avoided all pieces that are out of print, because much was out of print, and tried to include a variety of new pieces, contemporary styles, and a variety of including books where people can go through different levels and grades on the same book, so that they'll just be able to buy one or two books and be able to use that through several years, because that's quite an issue on the instrument. Besides
and that's for
a grade book for every year.
Yes. So we've added 2 new grades, as we mentioned. There's preliminary at the very beginning, and then certificate of performance, which comes after grade 8. So preliminary is supposed to be the very start of the harpist's journey. What was some of the considerations behind repertoire selection and technical work for this very beginning grade?
Yeah, well, we were addressing a couple of things. Some people might start on the harp and not have learned any instrument or be able to read music. Others might come from, adult beginners might come from having played other instruments. And there are different ways of approaching beginning the harp. Some people might use second finger and thumb for a considerable time. Others may start straight away placing all 4 fingers. So we tried to address a possibility to start on the harp in various ways and at different musical entry levels. So there'll be quite a wide variety in that first level, and a possibility to go through the preliminary in either way, in a way. And the certificate has been, because there's general knowledge but not technical requirements, so no technical exercises needed, that enables more time for longer pieces. So it's a recital level where someone who wants to bridge that gap between grade 8 and AMAS or level 3, or who may plan not to go on but want to have a really good certificate and have a recital prepared, can do that certificate. And so some of the longer pieces went in, they may be sort of equivalent to a grade 8 level, but they're longer, more substantial. That was the choice there. And I think that's really good for students who want to have something in their hand to say, yeah, I've really achieved. It's quite a high level, I would say, the certificate of performance.
Yeah, and to be a real chance to show off at the end of after grade 8. In putting together the syllabus in general, obviously a vast amount of time and thought goes into selecting and grading repertoire, and there's a lot of it in this syllabus, a lot to choose from. What were the guiding principles behind repertoire selection? What did you want to achieve with the repertoire featured in the syllabus?
Right. Well, number one was really inclusion of a lot of Australian music. There's a lot of really good Australian music now by harpist composers, as well as by some of our best known composers. And I've found teaching that it will get into a high school level, and students will need to have Australian pieces and not be able to find them. So having all that in the syllabus, I feel really proud of that from preliminary all the way through, there's always a selection of Australian pieces, including in the grade books. So that was number one. Also a variety of musical styles, of composers, of technical elements. So not everything could be included, and we included a lot. But that also addresses what I was saying before a bit about different technical approaches and abilities. So we really had to cover a lot of those, as well as age levels. So in those early grades, you might get, you know, an 8-year-old, and you might get a 40-year-old. And so they'll have different musical tastes and understandings. And so we tried to address all those things by offering a variety. So then not everything that teachers will have in their kind of repertoire of teaching, but we hope to have covered enough that they satisfy everyone's pathways again.
Absolutely. A lot that's familiar and a lot that will be new and exciting as well.
Yeah.
We sketched out the technical benchmarks quite early on, and I know that is something that's always very deeply thought about and heavily argued amongst syllabus committees across all instruments. But once those technical benchmarks were set out early on in the process, that's really what guided the selection of repertoire throughout the process, wasn't it?
Yeah, and that wasn't immediately obvious to us, and was really good that you suggested that, Steve, because it took us a long time, actually, really a long time to set those benchmarks. And, you know, we had spreadsheets with different things, and there was a lot of to and fro about what each grade would be required, what the minimum requirements were. That also includes the number of strings for the minimum requirement, the number of levers, the number of lever movements or pedal movements, all sorts of things to consider. And it was great to have that as a guide to start building the syllabus on. And it was a good sort of checking reference point for everything. So we could always go back to that. And from that, I developed the technical workbook, and the consultants followed that when they were looking for their repertoire. Not everything in the syllabus conforms. So you'll find some pieces in the syllabus might extend the keys, for example, but not many. So we tried to make it as close as possible.
A really close marriage between
guidelines. Yeah.
Often the technical work is really the heart of the syllabus. Whether or not students are preparing for a full comprehensive or a repertoire examination, the technical work is really behind many of the decisions made in choosing repertoire. Again, the committee was committed to creating technical work pathways for both pedal and lever harps, and it works in a similar way. So in level 1, we have technical work that is studied by both pedal and lever harp players, and then level 2, they diverge slightly. Could you tell us a little bit more about how those two instruments diverge in level 2?
Yeah, well, the benchmarks, as you say, were just the same. So we started with the pedal harp one because most of us were more familiar with that, and then Fran was really good in being able to stick very closely. I mean, a lot of the material looks identical, but then when you get less range, for example, you know, she would adapt something or to change the kind of keys. For the lever changes, introduction of some more modes, these kind of things, adapting a pedal exercise from the pedal exercises to a lever exercise, this kind of thing. So people will come out with the same technical demands, but they're adapted specifically. So it's not as if the lever harp is a kind of a watered down or kind of adapted version. I know I made it sound like that, but it's more that starting from that, it was possible to develop something that really addressed what lever harpists might encounter. So, you know, to fit the genres of music going through the grades as well.
So part of what's new about the syllabus, of course, is that for the very first time, there will be a technical workbook published by the AMEB for harp. And in fact, there are two of them, one for level 1, preliminary to grade 4, in which both lever and pedal harp players play the same technical work, and one for level 2, grade 5 to grade 8, with separate technical work for the two instruments, but all printed in the same book. We've got an example of a few pages from the preliminary technical work, just so that our attendees can have a look at how that all is laid out. So we just have the scale and the scale in thirds here, and arpeggios all laid out one after the other, fully notated, so the teachers can write in different considerations, different ideas about fingering, etc., etc. And just to give you an idea of how that all looks in the actual book. As well as the technical workbooks, we have also published a sight reading book for harp. This is essentially a collection of graded sight reading examples aimed at providing students and teachers with some preparatory material, but also to give a picture of the level of sight reading expected at examination at each grade. The sight reading exercises were written by celebrated composer, harpist and educator Mary DOUMANY, who is based just outside of Melbourne. Can you tell us a little bit about how the sight reading was put together?
Well, yeah, again, we used the template of that gradation for each grade. And so I put together I went back a grade or two for the sight reading, because sight reading on the harp is quite complex, not just because of levers and pedals, but also placing patterns, being able to read those ahead of time. So I sent through to Mary guidelines for what kind of technical thing we'd be looking for in that grade, and she was able to, create some nice musical examples for people to practice. And this is really missing on the harp. We don't have many sight reading books, and students often don't practice it because of that, and spend a long time learning their pieces, and therefore this is really, really important and useful. Also, we didn't really mention in the technical workbook, now we've got exercises which cover not just scales and arpeggios, but also extended techniques and different kind of technical control. And this is really wonderful, because it just shows that whole harpistic side of all the things we need to encompass as harpists, and it makes a great musical bridge between the technical work and the repertoire and the syllabus. And Mary was able to incorporate some of those extended techniques, even just simple things like harmonics and muffling, and maybe a fingernail or a glissando sound, into the sight reading as well, so that students are really aware that all those aspects that they're learning are part of their building blocks as they go through the grades.
For playing the harp. Yes, apologies. That is an important point that I'd like to go back to about the technical work. And this is in line with a lot of syllabuses that have been reviewed in the last 10 years, that it's no longer simply scales and arpeggios. There's a sort of more streamlined approach to the learning of scales and arpeggios, where there's fewer key centers in each grade, but they're supplemented by these technical exercises, which students can read from in the examination. They don't have to memorize these exercises, although they do have to memorize the scales and arpeggios. And the exercises, as you said, really give an opportunity to look at aspects of technique that can't be addressed simply by going up and down scales and arpeggios. And there's some really interesting exercises in there. Alice has come up with some extraordinary exercises involving extended techniques, right, really from the beginning, although they don't feel like extended techniques, they just feel like integrated parts of playing the harp. I just thought it was worth mentioning that at this stage.
Yeah, and that was actually one of the criteria, so what was behind the whole syllabus. That is also, I feel, one of the important changes, is that introduction of a breadth of technical work that's, or as you say, just about playing the harp. And that's whether it's in a scale, an arpeggio, a technical exercise, or a piece, it all feels musical.
Absolutely.
And that's important.
And speaking of music, we finally get to the grade books, which is often the most exciting bit about a new release. We've got 5 grade books coming out, one for each grade between preliminary and grade 4. And they're all suitable for lever harp and pedal harp players. Tell us a little bit about how works were selected for the grade books. What sort of things were you looking for in the pieces that they made it not only into the syllabus, but into the grade books themselves?
Yeah, well, there were quite a few considerations there that eliminated many pieces in a way, because that was a big criteria. They all needed to be possible to play on both instruments. They all needed to fit within the minimum requirements of range and of keys, so that people don't need to start with a fully levered harp, for example. And so everything within a grade book is possible to be played by someone completing that grade, because it will not extend outside of those technical limits. And they needed to clearly follow the technical guidelines. So even things as far as handspan, not going beyond an octave until, going up to an octave until a certain grade, that kind of thing. Also, I tried not to include the same composer too many times, or a couple of sort of standard composers like Grangeny or Salzedo appear a couple of times, but I tried to make sure that over all of this level 1 from preliminary to grade 4, people had encountered a variety of musical styles and technical approaches. So not too many things of the same musical style or technical approach, that kind of thing. So it was a real balancing act like this. Very interesting process.
Sorry, just a little bit of technical difficulty there. Thank you so much, Alice. Now, to give everyone a bit of a taster for the new AMEB Harp gradebooks, Alice has very kindly agreed to play a small selection of the works that you'll be able to prepare from the series, and talk a little bit about why those particular works were chosen for the grade. While Alice sets herself up at the harp, I'd like to tell you a bit about a very exciting competition that is just being launched by AMEB with our very generous competition partners, Carter Harps Australia and Carmack Harps France, in celebration of our new AMEB Harp release. You or one of your students can win a Carmack Telen lever harp valued at $6,850. To enter, you need to record a video of yourself playing a piece from one of the new AMEB Series 1 harp grade books. That's one of the books from preliminary to grade 4. And also answer the following question in 100 words or less. Why should you win a Carmack Telen lever harp? The judges will assess the 2 responses in combination, that is the performance and the 100 words or less response. Entries can be made at www.ameb.edu.au/winnerharp. The link should appear on the screen, but we'll also email that through to you at the conclusion of the event. Now, if Alice is ready, I'd like to hand over to her for a selection of works featured in the new AMEB grade books.
Great, so I've selected 1 or 2 pieces from each grade book, starting with preliminary, just to demonstrate 2 kind of aspects. So the first piece I've chosen is Home Again by Bronwyn Wallace. It's a lovely little piece, possible to play either in A minor with the raised G sharp, or in the mode, ALM mode, so with a lowered, without any levers. So I'll play it without levers so you can hear how beautiful it sounds. And this technique is just a single second finger in the left hand and the thumb and second finger, so we're playing in thirds, in the right hand, which is a very common way to start learning the harp. also from the preliminary book, from List A, Chimes of St. Paul's, which demonstrates placing a group of 4 fingers and playing patterns, but this time alternating hands, so not playing the 2 hands at the same time. So that one also demonstrates our thinking in List A, that studies can also be pieces if they have a particular technical aspect, in this case the scale and those placing patterns. So from grade 1, I've also chosen a couple of pieces. This one is an adaptation from Béla Bartók's Mikrokosmos, and it's for those who might be playing with 2 hands together for the first time. So in working in octaves with both hands, listening for the coordination of the 2 hands and the balance of the 2 hands, and also understanding long notes and shorter notes in this piece called Syncopation. And you can see how that one introduced also a simple muffle in the middle. So introducing these kind of things as we go along as part of the study element. Another one from the grade 1 book is a new adaptation, transcription of the Renaissance piece Toy by Francis Cutting, which is originally a lute piece. And this is a lovely piece that can be played really at any level. And you can see how that one has more complicated or complex alternation between hands and rhythmic coordination. So would be more for maybe an older student or someone who has more advanced music school skills when they have first started the harp. Moving on to grade 2, I've chosen one piece here. It's Jean LATOUR theme from the 3rd movement of Sonatine No. 4. And in this one you'll see again a step up in musical patterns. So dynamic control, shaping of phrases, there's a melody in the right hand, and a repeated accompanying pattern in the left hand. I've chosen to play all of these on the lever harp just to demonstrate how they sound on the lever harp, and to acknowledge that probably most students will be playing the level 1 AMEB grades on a lever harp. Now, moving to grade 3, you'll notice in all the grade books there's at least one composition by an Australian composer, which was an important criteria for us. And in this grade book we have a piece jointly composed by Australian composer and pianist Ian Munro with his daughter Lucy. So she composed a really beautiful little melody to which Ian has put an Alberti bass figuration. So that's why this one appears in list A. A melody, a sustaining sound in the right hand, the Alberti bass figure, which is introduced here in grade 3, and also a simple lever or pedal movement for the first time. Oh, I forgot to announce what the piece is called. How Does the Wind Go Higher by Ian and Lucy Munro. And one from grade 4, Alice by Mary DOUMANY. This is an adaptation by Mary from the Elements, a longer piece that she wrote with Ice being for pedal harp. So she adapted this when I went to Antarctica in 2011, and so many people have heard this in my Antarctic shows that it's really wonderful to have this appear now in print, so that everyone can have a chance to play this beautiful piece, Ice by Mary DOUMANY. It includes lots of different elements now, different patterns within the one piece, the use of harmonics as well, grace notes, and a little bit more lever or pedal movement. Well, I hope you've enjoyed that little selection, and there's plenty more lovely things in those grade books.
Thank you so much, Alice. What a privilege it is to hear those pieces performed at such a high level, particularly for me, as I've been working on them all year and haven't actually had much of a chance to hear a real harpist play the pieces. Before we go, there have been a few questions that have been sent through via the chat function that we'll do our best to answer just quickly. The first one is, how dissimilar from the old syllabus is the new one? It sounds like you started from scratch.
Yes, but we didn't throw out all the old pieces, because that would be really awful, because there are a whole lot of harp teachers sitting there with books that are really decent in their libraries, and we don't want everyone to have to buy a whole lot of new books straight off. So a lot of things may be moved down up to 2 grades. So you'll find 1 or 2 grades difference often. And that will be the most noticeable thing. So you will be able to use books that are still available to buy. Probably the main things that will have gone are things that are no longer in print, even though teachers may still have them in their libraries. But there's also an injection of new material. So that's new, and that did mean that some of the other things had to go.
But a lot of the standard repertoire was retained, of course, yes. But it may have been regraded along the lines of the new technical benchmarks for each grade.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which leads us on to our second question about works going on out of print. Any plan to publish them? Unfortunately, with this sort of situation, there are so many publishing houses out there that AMEB doesn't have control of, and unfortunately never will. But I know a number of pieces you have encouraged to have put back into print, haven't you, Alice?
Yeah, there are some pieces, for example, by Australian composer Lloyd Vick, who passed away a few years ago, who wrote an enormous amount for harp, and Vanderbilt Music is now publishing some of those. So yeah, and some of the Australian composers encourage them to just print their own music, you know, and put it up on their website, and that way have been able to be included. And so I think the process has been good in that way. It just made sure that some we really didn't want to lose and were no longer available, and we made sure that either the Australian Music Centre has them or that they'll be newly published.
And we're really hoping that the new harp and the harp syllabus, the new publications, and the activity around that will certainly spur along some compositional activity and interest in this country, if not internationally. Look, we're really out of time, I'm afraid to say, and this will conclude our AMEB Harp Syllabus and Publications launch. Thank you again so much, Alice, for your insights and wonderful playing. The syllabus and all the publications are available at your local music shop via ameb.edu.au and of course via other online sheet music retailers. Thank you once again to Principal Consultant for the Harp Syllabus project and our wonderful guest and artist today, Alice Giles, and the other consultants and contributors to the syllabus and books, Bronwyn Wallace, Jacinta Dennett, Frances Taylor, Jill Atkinson and Catherine Ashley, sight reading composer Mary DOUMANY, our typesetter David Howell, as well as the proofreading and editing team, and the many Australian and international composers whose works make the grade books so very useful and appealing, and whose works make the syllabus at large so interesting and such a wonderful collection. Thanks also to the behind the scenes AMEB team, Jeff Higgins, Leah Phillips and Alana Caldwell for making this online launch run smoothly. To the AMEB CEO, Bernard De Pasquale, and the other AMEB staff for all of their support. And last but certainly not least, to everyone who has attended this launch. Thank you very much. We hope that the new harp syllabuses and publications serve the harp community as a useful and inspiring resource for years to come. Thank you very much again, and goodbye. Have a lovely day.
Thank you.